Hi everyone, nice to be here at this DeFi panel over here.
See, presidents, governments now getting behind crypto. Back at crypto conferences in 2014, 15, there was 5 people in a room, and it was a little bit quiet and awkward. So we've come a long way. So super excited to be here.
Sasha,
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha. I'm partners and BD lead at 1inch. 1inch is the DEX aggregator, but we're considering ourselves as an entry point into DeFi. So we're aggregating aggregator, institutional part, and wallet part that we are going to discuss in this fruitful panel, I hope. Thanks a lot.
thank you. Igor,
Yeah, I'm Igor, co-founder of Bloom. Bloom is trading infrastructure. Currently, we launched on Ton with over 90 million users. In our infrastructure include like memepad and trading bot. So yeah, that's it.
amazing. Andre,
Hey, I'm Andrew, or Andre. I'm the CMO at Stonefy. Stonefy is the leading DEX on the Ton blockchain, leading in terms of TVL, trading volume, users, wallets, like everything. So, and also we have we have the DEX, and also we have the protocol, liquidity aggregation protocol. So it's our second product, more infrastructural one. Yeah.
that's
you.
amazing. And honestly, I think it's a great panel over here. And I think I would like to start with Michael because Michael, what I really like is what you just said that we have come, there's been an evolution of DeFi from a room full of 5 people to a lot of the people over here, as we can see. But I still feel that volumes in CeFi, action in CeFi is still much higher than DeFi. And also, when it comes to volumes, a lot of the TradFi people still trade on CeFi as opposed to DeFi. Those numbers are growing. But really, my question is, what do you think that us guys as DeFi projects can do to bridge that gap from CeFi to DeFi, notably for TradFi people and some of the big participants in the industry?
Sure, yeah, this is definitely a contentious topic. I just on my last panel, I was on a panel with centralized exchanges, and I'm a DEX, so it was kind of like a bit of a battle. I think that centralized exchanges, first of all, they kind of simplified UI, UX, and this is a conversation that people have all the time, is that, a centralized exchange is much easier than decentralized exchanges. Perhaps maybe that's to a Web2 user or someone newly onboarded into Web3, but for someone like myself, I find DEXs to be much easier. I don't have to KYC. I don't like to KYC. I have my wallet address. I can easily withdraw, deposit funds, similar to a centralized exchange. So I think that how do we onboard the non-native Web3 user into DEXs? That's the real question. And I think obviously UI, UX is a big part. Vanilla Finance, we focus heavily on simplifying those things. I also think that before things like Jupiter and AMAs, there was a huge liquidity problem in the DEX space where centralized exchanges didn't have that issue. But Jupiter, Radium, a lot of these types of products, companies really solved that problem. So now we are starting to see a shift where DEXs are really taking more liquidity from centralized exchanges, but I also don't think it's a battle. It's not DEXs versus sexes, right? It shouldn't be like that. In fact, if we look at OKX, they now provide DEX solutions for actually DEXs to pull liquidity from. So we source a lot of our liquidity on our DEX from OKX wallet and OKX DEX. So actually, it's a matter of us working together and not necessarily saying which one is going to reign supreme. That's not the point. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in here, and I absolutely agree. So the way how the basically exchange and swaps revolving is that we started from just P2P when we were looking for someone who can exchange the crypto to fiat money. Then it was the crypto processing part. Then the DEXs started to be existing, and this is where we improved this user experience. And then the aggregators like 1inch and Jupiter, as you mentioned, where people already got this access to the much more liquidity. And in terms of this, basically, a way on how to swap, there is also right now several ways where we are not just, for example, on 1inch part covering just liquidity from the DEXs. through the intent-based atomic swap solutions right now, you can cover the basically liquidity from both centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. And answering your question is basically to improve in tech intent-based specific, for example, where you already have the swap solution, which basically aggregate both centralized and decentralized liquidity. And the only issue were also like to make it cross-chain, and now it's also existing on the market. And one more thing and thought that I want to also add to Michael's point is that, yes, the question is how do we onboard those users? And where is the basically how we can get the users from CeFi to DeFi, and the way how we can do it is to basically communicate properly. So do the improve UX, but also do the clear communication with the audience in terms of the benefits. Yes, self-custody. What else basically? Be the owner of your keys. What are the basically weaknesses and bottlenecks in using the centralized liquidity? This what all we have to basically focus, and this is one of the points that I want to mention.
That's amazing. Igor, would love to understand from you, from your perspective as...
Yeah, I agree with previous speakers that first, I think it's ease of use. So currently, I think we have two parts here, user experience and technical side. So on user experience side, we have to remove all these complexity layers. We have to, and we only can do it on a tech side. So we have to make sure that user can create wallet smoothly. We can make sure that it's equally fast as CeFi. So and it's available like cross-chain. As far as we have wallet infrastructure well developed, so I think we will see the DeFi will grow as well in terms of volumes, because just much more people will be able to use it. Because I think main barrier right now is just, okay, people do not understand how to manage DeFi. They have to create a wallet somewhere, they have to buy tokens, they have to think and find some like exchanges, like protocols to do something. It's so complex, so for regular people. So as far as we eliminate these barriers and people, okay, like I want to exchange like one SOL to USDT, and I shouldn't care about like, or what kind of USDT, right? On which network, like on Ethereum, on Tron, or somewhere else on Ton. So it's kind of super difficult. And as far as we have a really well developed system in terms of user experience and backend infrastructure, I think that's when we will see it. But thing is, as far as we know, it's kind of trend is going higher. So more and more people joining. And one of the key technologies is MPC. So I think as MPC will be released, it's kind of a good balance between self-custody and centralized custody. So basically, you have three ways of where your key is stored, right? It's kind of exchange, it's you, and some like partner who's like independent. So, and people will much less care about like how they should protect their private keys, because it's in 2025, like nobody write like seed phrase manually on a paper. That's
Gotcha. No, very nice. And Andre, I would like you to perhaps put on your marketing hat on, because we talked a lot about user interface, liquidity, but I also believe personally community building is quite important. Having a strong ecosystem is quite important. And of course, as you mentioned, Ston as a DeFi protocol built on top of Ton. I'd love to understand from you, from a marketing perspective as well, how important do those two factors play into the growth of DeFi and DEXs, particularly in your opinion?
Well, of course it is, but I also wanted to add something to that. So to some point, I agree with you guys, but at some point I do not, meaning that, well, we're saying that, you know, in order more people can get to DeFi and so on, we need to have better UX, UIs, and so on. But I honestly believe that DEXs now and all other DeFi products, apps, and so on, they have pretty much easy UI now. So UX is much better. I remember, like how it looked 10 years ago, it was awful, right? Because you were not supposed to use that because it just was so complicated. Now it's not. Meaning that, so people can actually use DeFi, and of course we need to, I'll get back to the community, but yeah, we need to do that, we need to educate them and so on. But the problem is, your question implies that there is this gap between CeFi, maybe TradeFi, and DeFi. I agree with that, and the question implies, or the question is, how can we bridge the gap? And my question is, should we? Because, so I believe that for different people in different life situations, and for different use cases in different locations, they can use what they need to use, and maybe they can use at the same time, they can use traditional finance, they can use CeFi, they can use DeFi and so on. Because, okay, I'm very pro crypto, I'm pro DeFi, but I use traditional banks, I use centralized exchanges, I use DEXs, and I understand that for different use cases, I can use different products, which is great. And speaking about the community building, so again, of course we need to educate them because, well, if we say that all this stuff is not so easy now, although it is getting easier and easier, we still need to educate and onboard them. But my main concern is, this community building is mostly used to promote the product and actually to bring in the users is the first part. But the second part, and there are lots of concerns, I would say, mostly about safety, about security, about on-ramp and off-ramp. These are my concerns actually over here. So is it about community building? Well, maybe not, because, to some extent, it is about educating them. That's true. But if we think that, this is the only thing which is needed to bring them in, maybe not. So we use that as a promotion because our promotional channels are limited, right? So we need to have this community. We want them because also there's users community, but there's also builders community. As a protocol, we want these builders to use our protocol. So there are so many aspects to this community building stuff. So that's it. I don't know if that answers your question.
If you don't mind, I can comment on that. Why do we need to bridge the CeFi or DeFi? It's not about the bridging. It's about sharing the benefits from each of them. So, for example, again, we are a DeFi aggregator, but we have this Fusion Plus basically solution where we're getting this CeFi liquidity into our users to provide them with a better solution, better rates. So we're just getting this part of this centralized, basically CeFi through our resolvers to get this better rate. On the other side, you can see Binance Web3 wallet, OKX Web3 wallet. There is other Web3 wallets who want to have their Web3 wallet for some reason, meaning that they want to get these benefits from using DeFi. So I'm not saying let's not bridge, but let's just use the benefits from each other and make the community happen and bring the first billion users into our world and share this market together. That's what
I agree with you. I agree with you in terms of liquidity and so on. That's why we're building the protocol, because we want to, this fragmented liquidity. We think that it is broken. We want to fix that. So in terms of liquidity, yes, I agree with you. But speaking about okay, guys, we want everybody stop using CeFi. No, it's not my goal. They can use it because sometimes it is better to use a centralized exchange for different purposes, different use cases. Right.
No, I love that. And I think just going to tie it up with some of the points that you guys raised. I like what Michael said as well about how you guys partner up with the CeFi venues as well. So I do agree. I think CeFi and DeFi are going to coexist. And I think this interoperability is super important. Even at DYDX, we partner up with so many CeFi and Web3 wallets to be able to grow this ecosystem. I guess on that point, my question is, how do we make sure that our platforms and our DeFi protocols ensure interoperability while also maintaining our unique selling point, our USP? Because what you just said, Andre, the community building is important. It's a bit of a marketing tool as well. But I think at the same time, this community is also should not be ring fenced. Would you agree? It should not be ring fenced. It should be allowed to interact with CeFi platforms, as I said. So really, the question is for you guys: how can we ensure interoperability while ensuring that our platforms deliver the unique selling point and added value to the community?
I can start here. So basically, like when it comes to even cross-chain or like bridging, everyone using different innovative solutions. There is a bridges, there is basically intent-based swaps with some messaging. There is intent-based swap with the atomic swaps solutions, and we basically you can still achieve your goal to be interoperable.
It's a long word.
You know what I mean, but through different ways. So and you have to choose which innovation you bring in on the market, and this is how you're different. So this is the approach that, for example, we are using on our side. We know that it should be happen, so we're finding the innovation that we think is useful. We have arguments why we should use dedicated this tech and which problems it solves. So now we are providing the better UX through our innovation, and we communicating this through our innovation, Fusion Plus or whatever. And this is the way how we are following. So that's my comment on your question.
Interesting. Anybody?
Yeah, I think that interoperability needs to be the unique selling point. That needs to be the key thing. I always use this example. I've used it for many years. When you go to the bank and you send money from one person to another, one company to another, you'd never ask what infrastructure the bank is built on. Sending money from A to B is the point. This whole thing of like all these chains and all these layers, I get it. That's how it's built. But I hope we look forward to 10, 20 years down the road where you're sending money from A to B and you're not asking what chain it's on, what layer it's on. All of that stuff is, ultimately it hinders mass adoption. It adds another layer that user has to get over. If someone who's in the industry a very long time, and when I run into a swap or a bridge, I'm like, okay, this is easy. I understand how to do this. But if you take a step back and ask, could my grandmother do that? No, she can't. So I think we do have a long way to go. But I think that omni-chain and interoperability has to be the future of Web3. And that should be the unique selling point of most platforms.
No, I mean, I like that, but what you said is, in my opinion, is an ideal point that we want to get to. But I mean, if we just look at 2024 as well, right? I think there was a report that was done by Chainalysis or something that DeFi had the most amount of hacks and exploits on bridges. That kind of brings me to the question, how does DEXs and DeFi protocols bring trust to the user base?
Use 1-inch Fusion Plus. There is no bridges. Sorry.
And in our protocol, again, no bridges. So okay, excuse me.
No, please go ahead. I'm keen to.
I just wanted to say that, well, first of all, I totally agree with you. It's like, so so it is called tech track, but, when we, at these talks, when we talk about that, we mostly speak about technology. But actually, users, if we want adoption, users don't think about technology. They just have some needs. They want to trade or they want to move money or do something like that. But for them, so they just don't mind. Like, technology is your stuff. I don't want to know anything about that. I just want to move my money, or I want to trade, or I want to do something else, right? So, but we as, I would say, those technology providers, so if we want more users to start using DeFi, and actually we want, right? So we need to think about the value, and by value I don't mean, this total value locked or something. By value I mean what people want and what people get, so their needs and so on. So speaking about this, getting back to your question about the bridging technologies and so on, yes, that's the problem. Because we want them to forget about technology, meaning that we want them to be able to trade across blockchains, right? But we cannot use bridges. Because, why? Because it's not so safe. Because if they start doing that, if they face any issues, at that point they will stop using that. So that's why, again, like you do and we do, so we build these cross-chain solutions which won't use bridges, but it's not the thing that we actually want to communicate to the mass consumer, because we just want the mass consumer to use the product when they need it, and that's it. Don't think about the technology at all. So that's my point again on the bridging. So we think it is broken again. So these isolations isolation of the blockchain. So I think it's something which is broken and which needs to be fixed. And we are fixing that, and actually you are fixing that, because we are more or less building, similar stuff, right? So, yeah, and actually we are partners. So, like different aspects, but the probably the same use case. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that's very interesting that you just said. And when I asked the question about the trust amongst the users, of course, tech and bridges is one aspect that you guys talked about. I guess I just want to say from a DEX perspective, of course, we all have tokens and assets that we guys provide to our user base. Comparing that to the CeFi venue, I also think what DeFi can do is eliminate a lot of frictions and conflict of users that they have. Just taking listing as an example, and I'm sure you guys have been following on Twitter and the crypto news that some of the sexes and CeFi venues have broken listing processes and not trustworthy listing processes. So keen to understand that. So just on the DYDX side, we have done permissionless listing, so anybody can come and list anything. On that aspect of what other from the user feature level can we provide to our users to eliminate those frictions that today exist in sexes that we can do differently from a DEX level, from a DeFi level for our user bases? Any ideas, any innovative thoughts that you guys can share with us for the user base and for the DeFi community?
Yeah, I can go first. I've worked in the centralized exchange industry before, so I can kind of speak what it's like from the platform side versus the user side. The users may look at how the centralized exchanges list tokens and might think it's unfair. And I'm not speaking broadly because every single centralized exchange chooses how to list their tokens differently. But I think that every centralized exchange looks at how to evaluate tokens, right? If you look at OKX, people might say, well, it's unfair on how you can list on OKX. But actually, it's quite fair. You don't pay for it. You just have to be really, really good, have a massive community, have great influence, and then they'll find you. So some projects will say, well, I have no chance to list on OKX. Do better, right? Sorry to be blunt, but do better. Binance, people say that's not fair to list on Binance. I think all these exchanges, the user's perspective of it is totally different than actually the platform. I'm not trying to defend exchanges, but I think that there is a gap of communication there. When it comes to DEXs, the problem that DEXs have is they list too many tokens, right? The whole point of centralized exchanges is that they list, like they're supposed to list a few amount of good tokens per month or per quarter. There are some exchanges that list way more than they should because they're trying to jump on the meme coin wagon, which is a totally different strategy. That's fine. But I think that with DEXs, it's too many tokens coming live all at once, and we're not able to focus on what's the one I should put my money into, right? Like with Binance, it's clear cut. When a token lists on Binance, if you get in early, you're probably going to make money. That's not financial advice, but
We have probably 30 seconds left. If anybody has any last words to say, I know we can go on and on, but any last words anybody has to say?
Just one advice, guys. If we all here like for crypto, and even like when you drive in the taxi, you go into cafe, I always asking you to educate people behind you so we can bring more masses. Today, at least one person educate them on how to use DeFi. So tomorrow we have 100 more people, and the day after tomorrow we have 200 more people. Use your time, 1 minute, to just onboard the people into DeFi so we can make our dreams happen. That's my comment.
Speaking of Uber, we're actually running Uber ads. So if you see, I'm in a Uber ads only for Uber Black, by the way. So you got to be rich. So, but you see our ads, so we're educating.
I think that's a very perfect point to close this panel. So thank you everyone for participating in this panel.